Hello everyone, this is Dr. Brian Campbell. I wanted to take a few moments to talk to you about the integration of psychology and theology. I have a handout here that I'll be sending along to you on the process of integration and my general theory of integration in terms of levels of analysis. So I wanted to explain that to you. By now most of you are probably pretty confused as you read these textbooks on the integration of psychology and theology. We've gone through the history of psychology and theology, and now we're trying to see where the two can interact and integrate. Personally, when I was studying psychology, I got very confused. There were all these different theories and competing theories, psychoanalysis, cognitive therapy, behavioral therapy. It's very confusing. And it seemed like truth was everywhere. Like I would train in psychoanalysis and I'd go, there's truth. And I would train in cognitive therapy and I'd go, there's truth. And I would train in behavioral therapy and go, there's truth. So it was very difficult because I kept seeing explanations on these of behavior that appeared on the surface anyway to be competing or contrasting or contradictory even. Then I read an article by a guy named Theodore Merlon, and this actually was in his textbook, and it talked about levels of analysis. And finally I started to understand and clarify what I was learning from these different paradigms and different types of psychology. And as you'll see in this table, it's divided into nature, which has to do with body and flesh, and then nurture, which has to do with what we've learned in our environment, what we learn through growth and development. And then, of course, the third category I have here is spiritual and supernatural. So we have those three major categories, and I certainly think that all of these are important for understanding and integrating psychology. Now, the actual place where I integrate the psychology and theology is mainly in levels 3 and levels 7. All right, level 3 is the psychological cognitive, and level 7 is the spiritual religious. So, but all these different levels are not necessarily competing or contradictory. Right? They analyze and conceptualize different types of data, and that's what makes them, that's what separates them. But they don't necessarily argue against each other or run contrary to each other. For example, an explanation of human behavior at the biological level may or may not be relevant to an understanding of the behavioral level or the psychological level. For example, if someone has an affair and gets divorced, I would say that the best conceptual level would be at the psychological or the spiritual level. Certainly understanding biology at that point wouldn't give us very much understanding in terms of why that happened. So think of these as different levels of analysis, not necessarily contradictory, not necessarily in opposition to each other. Sometimes they're complementary. Now what I did was I took level 7 there, which is the spiritual, and combined it with level 3, which is the psychological. And I used the information from those concepts. Now, where my integration actually occurs is in the concept of belief, and that's mainly a cognitive concept that comes out of cognitive behavioral therapy, but it's also, of course, a religious concept. So I found the two together, I put the two together and extended my knowledge of cognitive behavioral therapy into my faith, or actually took my faith and extended it back into the knowledge of cognitive behavioral therapy. So what I do when I'm doing counseling is I focus on beliefs. Now I also obtain information from a lot of these other levels. In fact, counseling is not only integrating, but it's multitasking. You have to find information on various areas of functioning because they can be crucial in understanding the person and trying to help the person. But the confusion of these different levels, I think, will help you if you look at these different levels and try to understand that just because one level is arguing that they're true, that it may be not necessarily contradictory to other levels. So all truth is God's truth, and the truth about these different levels may help you understand individuals. And I thought that helping you to look at the data that you're looking at and the information you're getting as levels of analysis would be helpful to clarify this. Remember, my theory focuses mainly on beliefs, and that's where the integration occurs, but I also multitask and get information from all these other areas, which may be extremely important in understanding the person. So if you're confused, I hope this clarifies it a bit, and praise God. God bless.